coming today. It's a special day for us, especially for David, who put all this event together. So I really appreciate you being here. I've been just lucky enough to have been hearing some presentations in other rooms and just listening to what you presented, how you get, it's amazing. Thank you for preparing, for taking this seriously, and for coming to engage in great discussions today. So what I'm going to present today is similar to what Yvonne presented earlier. I'm going to talk more specifically about the text messaging side of our project. But I first have to say that I'm not the only one doing this stuff. I have a lot of help from my students, Yvonne included, Adrian, who was a student here. Now he's famous and he moved on. But he still works with us. And a lot of other students that have really made this possible. So, as Yvonne was talking about before, financial aid is probably one of the things that we're very stuck still. And I think a lot of people think of financial aid just in terms of FAFSA, right? Like Yvonne was presenting to us. I want to make a little bit more of a policy case, right? That there is need to engage in a deeper policy discussion about financial aid. We talked about performance funding, right? That maybe the things are going to be changing and colleges are indeed very concerned. One way that we could see to possibly ameliorate that worry is related to federal funding. So our study in this particular case, text messages, is about the Pell Grant. It's been estimated that students forgo, there's so many money left at the table for financial aid, but students are not finishing through the entire process. It is estimated, a recent policy brief that just was published last month really gave us a number. Now, we have figures now. 130 million in Pell forgone by eligible community college students in a single semester in the state of California. That is a lot of money. And that's something that I particularly am very interested in helping students get some of that money. Also institutions. My colleagues Paco and all my colleagues at UC Davis who did the policy brief just examined all these circles are all institutions. The Pell take-up rate in California community colleges, in the entire system. As you can see, there's so much variation. There's colleges that have almost very high numbers, 70%, right? 90% receiving Pell. But there's colleges that have here, right, around 60%, right? So as Yvonne and I are working in a community college that is around this area, he just showed you the numbers. So we're trying to, what they present a beautiful case of there is this tremendous variation. What does it really, the message is that it depends a lot of institutions. That means institutions have the capacity to change these numbers. It is not a state issue in the sense that we cannot wait for policymakers to do something. It is something colleges can change. It is something about the way they're communicating with their students, the way they're serving their students, the way they conceive their students that is affecting these rates. So again, I want us to understand that from all eligible students, the chart starts shrinking. Some of them will complete the FAFSA, less of them will be able to complete verification. So the amount of students that actually get financial aid is very small. And yet, again, a lot of the research centers on let's please complete the FAFSA, simplify the FAFSA. I get it, it's important. But I'm kind of tired because it is not helping our students get more money. It is not helping community colleges rethink that the way they're, again, communicating with students, serving students is very important, particularly for minority and low-income students. So what are we doing? We are partnering with technology companies, in particular a text messaging company, who's letting us really play with their software. We said, okay, let's try figure out if we can use technology to communicate better with students, right? We want to provide recommendations to this particular course. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff they can do. It's in their hands, right? The solutions are in their hands. So let's try to see how to help them. For this particular study, I came up with this idea of the strategic nudges, or the term, because I was a little bit tired of, economics, right? I have a love-and-hate relationship with them. I have my BA in economics, right? And they have reminded us that nudges are important. We're not just reminders, right? Hey, you need to do this. Hey, trust me, I benefit a lot from a little reminder of what I need to do during the week. So I get the idea that these are beneficial. But my concern with a lot of research, again, is that no research on students of color, no research on students that are marginalized. We just heard a case of homeless students. We don't know if something like this would work. Most of the research on nudging these are blanket statements. Oh, nudging works because behavioral economics works. Well, it works under certain circumstances for certain people. But what we were able to do with the strategic nudges is to really ask students first, what do you think about these messages? We can't assume that the way we communicate or we understand the financial aid process is the same way that they experience the process. I remember when Adrian was helping us at the Ubuntu, we came to the community college with these great messages. We wanted to be friendly with them, and we started telling them, hey, you're in the text, you want to get money, like, hey, bro, right? We started to do it because we wanted to be friendly, we wanted to drive. That was in our heads. But when we talk to the students, they're like, oh, no, thank you. I need a formal email. This looks like a scam. Your hey bro and your hola amigo, it's very nice that you say that, but I need an official institutional message. I need to know this is legit, and so we were all in shock, right? But that's why I call that strategic nudges. It's not just generally sending messages and bothering people, it's as if they don't know what they need to do, but it's not. These are reminders with their own content, voices, its experiences, try to embed it within the verification process. That was very important for us. We also created what we call a text messaging financial aid platform, where students could text in and have a desktop, I guess, a desk help. Text 1 if you need information on dates. Text 2 if you need information on the FAFSA application. Text 3 if you need information on the Cal Grant. Also, we made sure that we had information for undocumented students, for, again, marginalized students that are traditionally left out. If we had not partnered with the technology company and just used generic messages, we probably wouldn't be getting the results we are. But the fact that we stopped and said, we need to listen to students, we need to talk to them to really understand what is it that they need and how to create these works. So we've been also, like I said, taking the nudges about the deadlines of yes, FAFSA deadlines are important, but also verification. Don't forget tax transcripts, like how many students get trapped in that process. And again, some of the experiences of students, we constantly ask for their feedback. Was this helpful? In what ways was this helpful? We don't want to be blind. We don't want to be sending messages again for the sake of sending messages, because now it's cool to text people, right? So we needed to make sure we get it right. Particularly, we want to raise those FAFSA and completion rates. We were able to send texts to a lot of students. I think 1,100 in total consented to participate in the study. But for me, it's most important is that we are reaching to the subgroups that we want to reach. Low-income students of color, which traditionally have been left out of a lot of initiatives. that's the segment we are reaching, and that's what we're very proud of in this effort. So, the results. The most exciting part is that students who have received both access to the platform to engage with it and the nudges have received larger financial aid awards. And that, for us, like I said, has been one of the most important things. And not just a little, but by a lot. So the average, this is for students who engage. This is the amount of money, the amount of award given to students. These on the bottom are the students who did not participate in the study. And this on the right side are the students who participate. So you can see that the average award amount has increased for people who participated in the study. Same once you control for whatever, all those regression analyses that we did, we still found that it was significant. That students are on average receiving more financial aid as a result of the text messages. What I think one of the lessons is for us is we need to continue accumulating this evidence. We have not stopped. We learned a lot from the first year. From doing this effort, so we are going into our, well, the first year was just really getting feedback. The first year, or the second year, we did implement the stuff, and now the college is also going to start making big changes. I think they're probably going to go paperless with some of these things, so I'm worried, happy, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about what's that going to create. But we are committed, we established a long-term partnership with this college. That's, I think, another very important thing. Another lesson has been the data issues. To get here, it took us probably a year and a half. Merging data sets from Banner, those of you who are in IR offices or data people, Banner with enrollment data, with financial aid data, with the text messaging data was not easy. But it's doable. It's going to take time, but the partnership is really solid between the community colleges and our research team. And like I said, we're there for the long run. And we're going to stick there now knowing that it works. It would be foolish to step out. And now with the performance funding, this is even more attractive to community colleges. Because now they need to find other ways to fund their needs and their students, because one of these college in particular has pretty low performance indicators. So this is going to be one of those ways in which they may be able to make up for the loss of money that they will experience in the years to come, if the proposed funding goes through. So I'm going to stop it there. I want to make sure we have time for our folks who weren't able to get questions, and for Devon and I to ask anything that you guys want to ask, but I really didn't want to take too long. I could talk forever, faculty member. So that's something that happens.
So we will open up to questions to any of the presenters.
Yeah.
So did you guys take into account sort of like data charges, like the amount of students that get charged for text messages versus those that have unlimited? Did you find any information on that? Or?
Well, we cannot, they don't get charged for these texts, at least not in their, right now most of the plans are free text messages, so you don't use any data from your internet plan. So I used to work in a different project for the Gates Foundation where we're using apps, and apps do require internet connection. I would be very concerned continuing with that mode because it does affect students' ability to, their plans can get, but that's why we're changing to these more cost-effective ways of engaging with students, which the students don't bear the cost of this. Some of them, right? Because we have some students, like the population you're studying, where we just do not know really well if this would work with that or not. Yeah.
I have a question for Courtney and Nicholas.
Yeah.
Okay. I find your presentation really compelling. But do you have any ideas or research on why students don't take advantage of the services?
So we didn't ask any questions particularly about that, but when we spoke to actual like individual like home students, so it's what's the proper term? Not an analogy, but it's on an individual basis. It seems that because when they get kicked out of their home, they don't have like an actual address to put down in their FAFSA, like POG. So it's like they don't know what to do. And in the cases of people that I spoke to, it's usually because they have like family issues or like they conflicted with their parent on something, so they kick them out. So it's sort of like do I have all my information still sent to the house, or does my parent still claim me as a dependent? What's that whole information? But those are just a couple of individuals. We didn't ask any questions about that, but yeah.
Could I weigh in on that? I'm Anthony Hernandez from the Wisconsin Hope Lab. I led the 2 national surveys on material hardship. And so in my interviews, qualitative research with students, we found that they were very busy doing many things, but very often they couldn't connect with the programming and services that were offered by organizations. So we think that's one of the challenges, is that we don't want to blame the student and say that they are not taking advantage of something. We think that the responsibility is also incumbent on the institution. And so when the connection is not being made, then the programming is failing. So we have to reimagine how we can meet them where they're at.
I have a question about, so the studies that you just presented, so I was really paying attention to looking at the engagement from the continuing students, because I know there's a lot of attention around your first year getting assistance with applying and getting financial aid. And I noticed you have like a 70% engagement in continuing students. So the data that you presented around the stronger financial aid package, did that include those students as well?
We sent our first year students to make that particular draft, but we know that most of them who engaged still got higher. We just need to disaggregate better the data. But the research was really focused on first year students. But now as we move into the second year, we want to include different marginalized groups, returning veterans, homeless students, student parents, that's where Adriana is going to help me, to do student parents. So we try to continue students. Right now, those that are in probation. So we do have now the capacity, because we pulled the institutional data together, now we can play more with it.
Okay.
Now that we have everything.
The other part of my question was, were you using different nudges for the continuing students?
We have to craft different nudges for the, and that's been the absolute beautiful work of working with the financial aid director. We present them with, okay, these are the critical points where we think they need to be nudged. Now let's craft the messages, but we also have the ability to do focus groups to try to see if those messages are part of what you're saying, that they're not deficit oriented, that there's a fine line between being, like I said, annoying and not sensitive, and I worry a lot about that. I don't want to send it like you're doing everything bad. So I also at some point I presented to the institution the idea of nudging when you did something really good, to say thank you, to be you submitted, just because why do we always have to remind people what they didn't do? Right? So I've been trying, so I will start sending nudges when they complete the verification to tell them, thank you for persisting and for being so resilient. You got verified. Thank you. And I'm going to start testing that, because I do profoundly believe that we always want to focus on the negative when they don't do anything, but when you put them through so much, right? Think about the complexity. Not thanking them, not telling you like, man, you survived basically this stupid system. Thank you for, so I've started, that's why I call it strategic nudges, because I don't want to just replicate the nudging idea of, there's always a fine line between being deficient and not trying to approach this from a deficit perspective of always telling them you didn't do it, you didn't tell it, and like I said, the best is that we have the qualitative research too going on, so we're constantly talking to students. If we forget that from our research, I feel that's when you start disconnecting from the world and start assuming stuff that they're not going through. So the more we do this parallel work of, yes, pulling the data sets together, but talking to students to remind us, there may be a lot of stigmas associated with getting the A. That's why they may not access certain programs. That's also been part of our retake. They're the poor, they've been considered as poor, as incapable. I mean, they receive so constantly these messages that we want to be careful about that. Thank you.
My question is also for the Mount SAC group. So you all have this amazing data set. I imagine your intention is to transfer from Mount SAC to a four-year institution. Have there been any conversations with administrators about what's going to happen to this amazing data set that you all have, or are you hoping to take that with you as you transfer and continue to try to do this work?
So that's, I mean, the administration is the reason why we did this survey in the first place. Also in part because it's what our society requires us. Like she said, we do college project every year. So that's where we approach the administration of our college and we say, hey, we did this college project every year. Do you have anything that you guys want us to focus on? And then the college will give us a list of things like, focus maybe on the amount of students that, prefer eating food on campus. Last year it was a parking situation because parking is absolutely horrible. So we were asking them, where would you prefer parking if you build a parking structure? Things like that. So that's why we did it, also in part because when they told us that there was no data whatsoever, we're like, well, how many people are being forgotten or being left behind because they lacked a home, And it kind of also hit like personal note with us because it's like, I don't even know what to do, but and transfer before your institution. I don't have any plans for carrying this forward, but it's definitely something that's taught me a lot. So.
Thank you.
I have a question for Cecilia. Actually, I have two. The first is, are all the text messages in English?
We started the questioning, right? A lot of people have said, can you translate? I think that's, again, part of my next step. But I did translate some, not fully into Spanish, but I did Spanish kind of thing. And like I said, the response was more like, we want something official, and unfortunately official for them is English. But I'm still open to the idea of translating the entire stuff, the drawing text, the platform for financial aid into Spanish. And see what could that open.
Yeah, so my second question is, what role do you see this playing in parent involvement? Or do you see this kind of going in that direction, or will it be student focused?
Well, I feel in general higher education has not tapped into parents as a resource. I feel I would love if we could do high school parents, we could extend it to families. Right now, Adriana and I are going to do a study, a follow-up with student parents. So at least start with that part, but I do feel we alienate a lot of families from higher education institutions in general. So I would love to do that. We do have the college has a family event that we help them to try to get some data as to what their parents were thinking about financial aid. So there's a lot of stuff that we could do in collaboration, and we do, but the technology is still a challenge. Although let me give you an example of a student, I will never forget, is in the focus group. We started talking about did you find this helpful, valuable? And she said, my mom loves the texts. I'm like, your mom? Like, why does she love the text? She said, well, is that going to, somebody asked me about the data share plans. The cost is not on the text, but they share phones. So the mom was getting the messages and then telling her, like, you need to do this and you need to do that. So that was she tell me my mom loved the messages, and I was like, beautiful. That's the perfect evidence that we need to include families and stop also treating everything as if they're individuals separated from their communities and their parents and their siblings and whoever it is that accompanies them through life, right? But hopefully that will come more in our studies.
I have two questions, one for you and then a comment for you, but I'll go with Cecilia's first. One of the challenges that I'm finding in our community college district, and I'm coming from Arizona, is that we have administrators who don't understand the FAFSA or the Pell Grant, even the language that they use. No, they're not eligible for FAFSA. No, they're not eligible for the Pell Grant, but they've been filling out the FAFSA. And so I have administrators, vice presidents, deans, who say we don't want them to fill out the FAFSA because we don't want them to use up all of their Pell Grant eligibility. So there's a basic misunderstanding here of that financial aid. Have you found, and I know you did this at Rio Hondo, but have you found this amongst administrators? Because to me, we have an education issue here in terms of deans and financial aid and vice presidents and presidents and governing boards, so forth and so on.
And with back with my colleagues at UC Davis, that's probably the next step. We want to interview financial aid directors because we know that the variation is in the hands of the colleges and administrators, right? We just saw the evidence. It's clear that what they do, every college matters. So we need now to reach out to them, to talk to them and say, please help me, how do you staff your office? Like this is where the research is not going. In understanding, where do you put resources? How many people you have in the room? I mean, if you sit and observe, it's very humiliating, this process of going to ask in these windows to share, especially the verification. Have to share, I got divorced, in front, almost like voice it to everybody. I mean, it reminds me every time I go and observe some of these financial aid officers, it reminds me of the confessional for those who are Catholic. But without the privacy. I have to go and confess all my sins to a person that I have no idea who they are, but I have to share this very personal, sometimes it's death, sometimes it's divorces, sometimes it's a lot of complex stuff that I don't even know if I can share with my brother, you know? And then I have to do that. So what they need a more, of course, we need to educate them not only in what the federal policies are and the processes, but also in what the students are going through. I feel there's those two ways of educating, but that's again one of the spin-offs of doing the research and the collaboration. Some of my colleagues at USC, we're meeting every year to see where are ways in which we can do better research in collaboration. And we found that financial aid is one topic where we all can chip in and expand it and make it better. So, and then you have one.
Yes. We did a similar study our PDK students did for the Honors in Action Research Project. So two things that came out of that. One, expanded our food pantry and access to the food pantry that students have. Greater awareness for the faculty and staff about this issue, which led to a syllabus statement addressing that. And when we used that, we did a small study with some faculty members. We saw that food insecurity was the only variable that mattered in terms of students' persistence and retention. And having included that syllabus statement, saying to students, hey, we know that you may be undergoing this, here are some of the resources that we have, and there's some templates, I'm happy to share them with you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have about a minute and a half if there's a final question or two. Okay.
Can I just talk about the collecting of data? We recommend that that's the first step that a campus do. So we want to try to get a sense of what is the problem. Too often campuses respond by creating a food pantry, and the labor that's being done at food pantries is students. And so we challenge organizations, colleges, and universities to think about the problem through many multiple layers. Who are the stakeholders that you're going to assemble, maybe a task force, maybe a committee, with people with all levels of responsibility at the university to, first of all, shine light on the problem, and then what are your responses going to be besides the food pantry? Many colleges have food pantries, but they have students who are still grappling with material hardship, housing, and food insecurity. And the big idea at the end of the day is that when you address their basic needs, it's about college completion. So you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? That's central to the research that we do. If students are not having their basic needs met, they're not going to get to the top of the pyramid where they can realize that enlightenment. You would imagine that in today's environment of austerity, where there's not a lot of resources, that once you have those students there, you really want to commit yourself to helping them thrive. Too often, however, we find that students are grappling to survive. And what happens is that, I recognize in your survey that you had a particular timeline. We want to try to address those students in the first 3 weeks of the semester, because we find that those students who are most at risk will drop out after that time. So we want to meet them, hopefully in a holistic way, as soon as they arrive, take an assessment of what all of their needs are. And you have to remember, because we have more students coming to school now, more students who are diverse, more students who are coming from communities that didn't have access before, students who are coming from low-income backgrounds, they have needs that are different than people who traditionally went to school. And so we have to imagine that the way that we imagine the financial aid process working was we would give them money and they would use it to go to school. But for many of these first generation and low income students, they actually get that money and the money goes backwards to the family. Mom needs money for the apartment, the car broke down, and so we want to address the whole needs of the student, only we don't know what they are unless we do that holistic assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, guys.